Friday afternoon, folks. Ted Ralston here in downtown Honolulu studio of Think Tech Hawaii with some of our great guests scattered around the country online with us on our show, Where the Drone Leads. Typically, we have people jammed into the studio here so that the table is completely full. In this case, we've actually got those people distributed around the country, and only I am here. We did have the studio enthusiast running around earlier, but he seems to have escaped, so we'll just carry on. We do have, however, one of our favorite guests on the show here, one of our UASs or drones that we talk about on the show, Where the Drone Leads. In any case, where does the drone lead? Actually, it leads only in the direction that the FAA will allow us to lead in terms of regulations and requirements, as well as where the state and local and privacy people are going. So rules and this sort of thing, those kind of constraints are very important and very important for us to understand and for everybody to work with. So where the drone leads, it leads in the direction that the rules will allow, and it also leads in the direction that the sensors and the other payload packages that are used to extract information and then make some sense out of them are being developed. And interestingly enough, on this very table a couple of weeks ago, we had a gal named Gretchen West here from Hoban Lobles Incorporated, and one of the points she made, and which would be good for our guests to react to today, was one of the things that's most underrepresented in this whole world of dronism is the end user's input in terms of what is really important, what's really necessary, and what will really get the job done. So I think I'd like to explore that concept with our guests today, and they are one of our returning frequent flyers, Chuck Devaney, who probably launched this show 3 or 4 years ago, sitting at this very table. Chuck, we're up on the 8th floor now, not down in the basement anymore, so we've elevated ourselves considerably in life here. And we have Clay Inskeep. Clay Inskeep, ex of Kailua and other places on Oahu, who's joined us today, and he's in California. So we have Washington, D.C. with Chuck and Clay in Northern California. And let's begin by having Chuck introduce what he's been doing to Clay, and then we'll have Clay introduce what he's been doing to the three of us. Chuck?
Hey, Ted. Great to be on the show again, man. It's the only time we ever get to hang out. Right. So, what have I been doing since last we spoke? Well, I've been to Texas. I've been doing a lot of like SAR classes.
Search and rescue? That kind of class?
Yeah, search and rescue, yeah. A lot of search and rescue type classes. We just got back from Texas. Now we're getting ready for Trident Inspector. So I haven't been doing a whole lot in the way of, the old school mapping type stuff we used to do back in the day. Mine's been more Department of Defense, counterterrorism, threat detection type stuff. So my path has changed quite significantly as we get ready for Trident Inspector here, in which I leave in 2 days, and I'll be doing naval experiments, 11 of 66 experiments at Trident Inspector this year.
That's
Most
great.
of them will be at sea.
Describe a little bit the organization you now work for, Chuck, and how that plays in the DoD domain and in Trident Inspector and such.
Well, I'm not really 100% certain of the exact origin of the academy, but it has been brought together by a trust of individuals who would like to see the industry move forward in a relatively sustainable manner. I got selected to be a postgraduate fellow, and now I've been appointed to the Director of Information Sciences, where I've been doing everything from the initial question all the way through to the design of the workflow to post-processing, to figuring out what sensor we need to incorporate into which aircraft, and ultimately all the rules and regulations that encompass that entire thing. I take on a lot of responsibility to make sure that each and every mission follows a certain criteria.
That's really good, and that's also a really important point in the concepts that Gretchen West took us through a couple of weeks ago, wherein the end state of this business, the steady, dependable, durable aspect of the business that's likely to succeed here, is that of information extraction, data sciences, and the inferences and the references and the expression of what is being collected by the sensors as they go forward. So you're on the right track. That and training. And the third one, by the way, was counter drone. And I'd like to talk to you either online or offline a little bit about first level counter drone, which would be detection. We have some crying needs here in the next month that I'd like to.
And I've got a lot of answers for you already. We can talk about that. That can either be a sidebar, or we can talk about it a little bit in the show if you want.
Okay, let's see how that fits in. If we have enough time, if not, I know your number. So anyway, that's Chuck Devaney, ex-graduate student of UH, ex because he graduated out of UH and he got his master's degree in geography, and now you're going to head off for a PhD somewhere, Chuck, at some point in time?
Most likely. There's not a lot of people that don't want me to do that.
Okay, so. That's great. And so, and you got common knowledge through Matt Barbie and people over there in coastal geology, and let's turn now to Clay Inskeep, who connected to us through Matt Barbie. And Clay, all we have is your picture here because wherever you are in Northern California, there's not enough bandwidth to support a good Skype picture. So we'll assume that you look today like the picture on the screen looked whenever it was taken.
Assume nothing, Ted. I'm hiding out in Northern California in my bat cave.
Okay, and then earlier when the video was working, we could see that the sun hadn't set yet in Northern California, so we're not really keeping you up past your bedtime too much.
No, not at all. It's just about dusk here in Northern California. I'm actually in Sonoma, in the wine country in Northern California. And I'm interested to see if the other member of the panel had spent time with Gene Robinson in Texas doing his SAR training.
Yeah, Gene Robinson's actually a good friend of mine. Gene and I both spoke at the humanitarian UAV experts meeting at the United Nations in 2014, and then Gene and I also spoke at the first national drone users group meeting where I actually accepted an award there. So yeah, Gene and I go back. And well, I did when I was in Texas, yes.
Well, I admire the man as probably the consummate professional in our discipline, our being the UAS discipline. I was fortunate enough, I should say, to spend the last couple of days with him at the SUAS Business Symposium in San Francisco. And I was, nothing but ears when Gene was talking. The qualifications that he has, the professionalism, and the whole program that he has put together with his fire department are, I think, a benchmark for a lot of different areas of at least civil and public UAS operations to measure themselves by.
And he's also been fundamental in helping get the awareness of what aspects of the regulations and such have to be retained and have to be adjusted in order to get through and make these drone functions useful in the civil environment. And he's been certainly a leader in that area. In fact, he actually was a guest on this show probably 2 or 3 months ago, and that was quite intriguing discussion. But Clay, tell Chuck and I a little bit about, and our audience, a little bit about your background and how you got into this business, coming from Kailua, as you did.
Well, I was born on Oahu in the mid-'70s. My father owned a contract air cargo business run out of Honolulu called Horizon Air Service. And they lasted for quite some time, and they were, at one point, one of the larger air cargo operations in the state, if not in the country. And so from a very young age, I got involved in aviation one of the first memories I have as a young child was putting up the landing gear in my father's Twin Beach going out of Honolulu before the reef runway was built, believe it or not. So from there I went on. My father and mother worked both for the airlines, and they were in between furloughs in the 70s and running the air cargo operation, and we wound up moving to the mainland when I was a youngster, and I served out my primary and secondary school on the mainland, specifically in Sonoma County, in Sonoma, California, in the wine country. And I've always been in aviation. My father's, he was a Naval Academy graduate and a pilot in the Vietnam War and a private pilot. And so I, through just being around him, had an innate interest in aviation, and I wound up going to Embry-Riddle, getting a degree in professional aeronautics. And long story short, so I've spent a lot of my life working in maintenance and aviation in one form or another.
If I can interject, Clay, it's a really great background. Most people getting into drones or UAS don't have the aviator background. You bring that totally into the picture. So let's take our first break here, but let's talk about how that background assisted you in transitioning into UAS when we come back from our first break.
Okay, great.
Aloha, I'm Kili'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the Think Tech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week, we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to Think Tech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the Think Tech Hawaii broadcast network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
We're back, folks, Friday afternoon, downtown Honolulu. Ted Ralston and our fantastic crew once again on Where the Drone Leads. And in this case, the drone leads us in the direction that the rules will allow us to go, and as the sensors and payloads and such that are being developed will enable us to go. We were just talking to Clayton Inskeep before the break. We had Chuck Devaney on a little bit before that, and Clay was just telling us his background, coming from an aviation background and moving into the UAV business, which is pretty much backwards from the direction that most people come, which is from the model airplane or the robotics domain into aviation. So Clay brings this really valuable background and experience. So Clay, after that discussion about your aviation background, how did you get into the UAS business?
Well, in full disclosure, I've been a maintenance professional my whole life, either in aviation, marine, or automotive. I've run many different types of maintenance operations, and I got injured at work. And so I had an injury that wouldn't allow me to continue my trade, per se, forward in my life. I couldn't get in the trenches anymore. And so around about 2 years ago, I decided to start looking for different things that I could be a fit into to support my family, my growing family, and my interests and my capabilities. And I came across the drone market, the future drone market at that point. It was all speculation, as I'm sure most of it is now. But I realized that a lot of what I had trained for and a lot of what I had done in my life could cross over to the drone market and the training and the operations of unmanned aircraft. And so I started to pursue it very hard, for lack of a better word. And I applied for my Section 333 and got accepted. And then realized that there was a lot more to becoming a commercial drone pilot than just simply getting a Section 333, no matter what your aviation background was. Coming from a maintainer background, coming from a pilot background, coming from an aviation background in general, didn't quite prepare me for the realities of operating commercial drones.
You'd be a great asset to the FAA, I suspect, at this point in time, with that combined background you've got and the awareness you just generated, you just mentioned about the shortfalls or the incompleteness of the preparation that the aviation community left you with as you moved into the UAS world. So tell us a little bit about your company now.
Well, my company is called Drone Aviation LLC. We're based out of Sonoma County, California, and we are currently operating in California, in Arizona, and soon to be Hawaii. And I say soon to be in a rather unfortunate way, because we've done some research into the market in Hawaii, and there seems to be a lot of what the FAA calls rogue, quote unquote, operators. And what we see being rogue operators is we see a chance to assist them into helping them comply with FAA regulations and operate not only safely, but legally, and to be able to do things that most companies that are operating in the United States. As a matter of fact, in the last couple of weeks, we've come to know that about 90%, and this is a quotation from the FAA, About 90% of the Section 333 operators in the country are not operating legally. And that's something that we really want to change, because it's not going to take very many rogue or bad operators to put the rest of us out of business.
You know,
so we're giving.
I certainly agree with you in terms of the percentage of rogue operators, which may not necessarily be because they wanted to be rogue operators, they simply don't know. And a lot of them haven't even read their own 333, especially if they had it prepared through a third party of some kind, or aren't aware that the sectional rules just as much as the 333 does. And there's other things to know besides just what the 333 has in it. But again, so we've got that situation, and that's why counter-drone was a subject of great importance. Let's switch to that. I think we may have to pull Clay back in the picture here. But in the meantime, we still have Chuck online. And Chuck, let's go ahead and chat a little bit about counter-drone. Clay led us nicely in that direction, and we'll get him back on. But certainly, as you know, we have a lot of people running UASs or drones pretty much wherever they want, just because they haven't known or there's no way to bring the information to them or educate them or for them to go get the information readily as to what the limitations and the constraints and rules are. So the basics of counter-drone that we have to get into are basically detection.
The person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable.
Here's the deal. I'm Jay Fidel. I'm the host of Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, which is the Energy Policy Forum's program on Wednesday. That's how we call Wednesday Energy Wednesday. We call it Energy Wednesday every Wednesday. Are you surprised? Okay, and we try to get guys like Jim Alberts here from Hawaiian Electric who can tell us what's really going on in energy. We want to be informed. It's so important. It's the most important initiative in our state. Clean energy is major, okay? And that's why we cover it on this show. That's the deal. What do you think, Sharon?
I think that's great. That's why we're here every Wednesday from 4 to 5, and we hope you all join us so we can hear people like Jim coming on our show and co-host Ray Starling from Hawaii Energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here today. You've seen this. You heard what she said. What do you think?
I think it's a tremendous opportunity for people to come together and talk about the issues. Oftentimes there isn't a good forum to bring these key issues out into the public, and this is a tremendous way to go about it. And the activity of this show is essential to keep talking about energy, because as you said, it's such an essential part of our lives that we need to pay attention to it, and we need to think about the future.
Okay, Ray, your turn.
Well, this is a special time in the history of Hawaii where we're making some pretty radical changes in the way we use energy and generate energy. And this show is the one place you can count on coming to every Wednesday and hearing something about the latest issues that are on the table, being discussed, that will affect us all going forward. So come join us, and if you have some ideas you want to share with us about energy, give us a call and let us know. We'll put you up here and let you talk for an hour. So come see us.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Jim. It's great to be, from Think Tech's point of view, it's great to have this show. We love the show. It's our most important show. So come around and listen to us 4 to 5 on Wednesday. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
We're back, folks, downtown Honolulu. Ted Ralston here. We've made some minor technical corrections here. We may or may not have all of our guests lined up, and we'll see how we can get the information we need and get going here. Anyway, Chuck Devaney, I think we still have you on the line, don't we?
Yep, you still got me, Ted.
Hey, Chuck, good. Do we got his picture too? Chuck, we got all of you. That's great. And Chuck, it's approaching 10:30 in Washington, D.C., where you hang out these days. And we appreciate you staying up beyond your bedtime hour and entertaining us with your current and vivid thoughts on UASs and such. What we were talking about just before the break was the issue of counter-drone. The counter-drone in the military context means all the way from detect all the way to defeat. In the case in the civil world here, we have to be very careful and think in terms of just the detect component. But clearly, systems that can detect the ongoing communication between a ground controller and a UAS in the public unlicensed bands, that's simple and has a couple hundred yards range would be very useful for people in the police departments or even the fire departments and this sort of thing in trying to observe whether there's action going on. I know we've tried Wi-Fi Analyzer it's a free app on your Android phone. It is a little bit useful but not very functional because it doesn't have any discretion. It just simply shows all the activity going on 2.4 or 5.8. We need something that's in handheld form that does the analysis and the discrimination of a drone signal as separate from the car phones and from the garage door openers and other things that are going on in the public bands. What have you seen, Chuck, in that area that we can get our hands on out here on Memorial Day?
Well, let me, I'm going to start from the top.
Good.
And then, so when we were in Texas, we had a meeting with an individual who's, and forgive me, I don't remember the name of the company, but he demonstrated for us a unit which was not handheld, but would cover an area, a radius from their location, because it orbits, of about 1.5 to 2 kilometers.
Was that Drone Detect? They're in Texas. They were in Austin, I think.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that might have been, I think that was drone detect, but they don't have the audio component. But they can actually determine where the operator is and where the actual vehicle is, but only for a few different models. So we're talking like your most common ones, the smaller ones, something like a Phantom 3 or 4, or the Solo maybe. I'm not sure, maybe the Inspire as well. Everything that is going to be of that smaller, more commercial class, they can detect where the operator is, put it on a map, and where the vehicle is as well.
What kind of footprint does it take in terms of manpower and square feet in the ops tent to host that equipment?
Well, let's just talk about the Lantern Festival. It'd probably take 1, maybe 2 people to be able to cover all of Ala Moana.
Okay. That's what we're talking about, the Lantern Festival, yes.
Yep. So
it's one piece of gear, a couple of cubic feet?
It's maybe 4 cubic feet.
Okay.
It's a pretty good sized unit right now. It's in its first iteration. A lot of the money is all tied up in the software engineering, but it actually gives you the signal strength, the type of vehicle it is, the geographic location of the operator and the vehicle.
That's pretty good stuff. That's more than we can actually handle at this point in time, because we have to think of the training, you have to think of the officers in the ground patrol who have no background in this at all. So the fact that all we have to do is tell them there's something going on, and we do have a higher level of law enforcement attention to the problem this year, and the ground troops can still go take care of the action that they have to take care of. But this information in any of those components of what you just outlined would be superbly useful in accelerating the discovery and then the detection. So that's Drone Detect. I've been in touch with, can't remember his name, the guy in charge of Drone Detect, and we're negotiating back and forth on that. But what's next after that one?
Right on in our compound, we have a company called Drone Shield, but they're predominantly audio. So they're doing more of the acoustic methodology behind it all. And I think their range is about anywhere from 0.8 to 1 kilometer.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad. They've got a big array set up on top of our building,
which we probably wouldn't want to do. That's probably not quite in the small.
It's not tactical enough. Yeah, you don't want to set up a permanent structure, right. So you need more of a tactical unit. This would be something that could go into, and you probably wouldn't really want to use it for anything other than a large event where it would attract that crowd that's going to put people in harm's way with that equipment. It's basically like rolling up with a guitar amp and a guitar, and that's about it. It's about like the size of a small refrigerator.
So that's more of a permanent installation that you would find on a Waikiki somewhere, where the issue of keeping the drones away from the people in the hotels and such would be a factor. So you put something like that in a central location and then have a group of people get information from it.
Yeah, 2 or 3 probably would cover Waikiki pretty well. And I don't, with all the building infrastructure there, I'm not really sure how well it would work in that environment. So, but you know, if it's worth the safety of the individuals of Waikiki, I would imagine that, you know, spare no expense.
So we're probably talking, ultimately, the ideal solution would be a combination of the electronic identification as well as the acoustic background or the acoustic detection, and put them together into some kind of a...
Exactly. So both entities are very aware of each other and their capabilities. One would say that they are better than the other, but what they really need to do is come together and develop one sound, you know, relatively sustained, you know, dominating piece of equipment that can be used, because it's not everything about, you know, protecting the, you know, us from drones on a more private level, or it's more, you know, for the warfighter as well.
Yeah, there's a whole defense side of this equation, because certainly as UAS or drones predominate and proliferate in the world of ISIS and such like that, there's going to be the need for the tactical environment, which in the conflict or combat environment, you can go all the way to defeat, which would mean freeze in place or cause it to land or something like that. In any case, the civil market will be a long way before it sees something like that, because of the emissions issues and the FCC and its requirements for things that emit, but certainly things that listen and simply extract information about what's going on and point to an activity that shouldn't be going on. Is no different than a radar detector or a license plate reader or the other things we've come to accept as standard practices in the enforcement, as technology makes things requiring of being enforced. And this is just the next dimension in that direction. So I will get back with the guys at Drone Detect that I talked to, and if that doesn't match what you were working with last week, I'll call you up, Chuck, and we'll figure out how to connect the dots here.
Absolutely.
You know, it's interesting that, again, Gretchen said that the counter drone in that aspect, just the pure detection aspect, is going to be kind of like McAfee on your laptop. You know, we can't get by without some kind of virus protection in your laptop. And if you run a business, you run a hotel, you run a company, you run a prison, whatever it is you run, you're going to have to deal with the fact that people are going to be out there penetrating your perimeter, either intentionally or unintentionally. And that's got to be detected so that it can be halted if there's anything adverse about it. And the national parks will face that situation, as the national parks are they're drone-free zones at this point in time. And so helping with that enforcement, that policing will be an important factor. And you know, in Clay, we've had electronic dropout here, and we've lost Clay for the night, but he was mentioning that there's a lot of rogue activity out here in Hawaii. I suspect it isn't just Hawaii. I suspect that's pretty much everywhere. But it certainly is something that has to be addressed. And again, I think roguism isn't necessarily adverse. People just don't know. They're not informed. They don't have any way to get the information about what is acceptable or what's not acceptable. They've got a drone, they got it for Christmas, they're going to go fly it. And the bad area, the situation I think he's most concerned about, I'm guessing, is that the folks who are out there selling a business and making a profit or making some money at this game without having any of the proper credentials in place and the proper process controls and such in place to ensure everything's safe and everything within the bounds of privacy, landowner agreement, and FAA airspace integration agreement. And I know it is personally frustrating to people who are in the game and are taking every step to go forward, such as Clay is, Mike Elliott here as well, in that it's very easy not to be able to get the permits and the licenses in place in order to get a job done. But the rogues can come in around that and get the job done and get out and make some money and never see them again. So we do have that behavior situation we got to think about. Have you seen that elsewhere in the country, not just in Hawaii?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it depends on, you know, what context. You know, if you look on YouTube, there's a ton of people throwing up all kinds of videos that are absolutely spectacular, but they're flying over crowds of people, and you know, maybe they're not making any money at it, and they're really, really excited about having their equipment, but they haven't been put in a situation where something can go wrong with the equipment because they're so complacent about it that it's only going to be a matter of time where we're going to start seeing, some accidents happen. And, sure, there will be accidents, but it'll be because it's too easy to get the equipment. You only need a credit card, and you're flying within 20 minutes of your Amazon delivery. And these are pieces of equipment that can ultimately harm people. And even if it's not for the almighty dollar, you're not considering yourself a commercial entity, you're still trying to prove yourself as being a social media entity or something like that, which is also a driver,
That's a really interesting point. And you make a very compelling point here as well. It isn't normal operation that's where the problem is. It's abnormal operation, or when something's going wrong. When you lose command and control, you lose GPS, or you simply let the battery run out. There's all kinds of ways in which a malperformance can occur, which will have unintended consequences. Even dropping into the Hawaiian Electric substation, for example, would probably not be a pretty situation, depending where the thing fell. And into a reservoir or something like that, or schoolyard, wherever it might be. So dealing with the unexpected, dealing with the adverse effects, the things that aren't planned and you don't have any training for, and you probably don't even have any awareness that are going on, but you suddenly have a problem on your hands and not much time to react to it. And really no idea what to do about that in terms of recovering from it. So that's the real downside, isn't it? Normal operation isn't so much the problem here. It's the unanticipated, unplanned, unknown consequence downside of when there's a problem of some kind. And that leads me to another thought that I would like your reaction on as well. Clay was at 2 conferences in the last 2 weeks, which is why he was so valuable to the show tonight. He was at the conference in Dayton, where a lot of discussions of the FAA and the impending FAR 107 and other actions were discussed. And then this week was in San Francisco at a conference on payloads and sensors and sensor analytics and the post-flight analysis and such. So he was all primed with where the rules are going from the FAA and the operation side, and where the sensors are going. Those 2 dimensions are very important to the future of UAS. But I have read, and so I was hoping to get his feedback on that, but I have done some other reading and found that we'll be seeing some standards coming out. TSOs will be called, I suspect, technical standard orders, which will be developed at sort of an industry level, not so much by the FAA, but by the manufacturers in a consortium orientation, sort of from a best practices point of view, in terms of radio frequency operations and management, securing the communications network, design standards for the structure and the control system, and fault tolerance, and those things will be done at an industry best practices level. And we'll start seeing some of that coming out maybe even this year. So once that happens, there'll be sort of a junction in the road. If you can't go that way with your system, it's going to disappear or remain forever a toy. In order to adopt the more stringent requirements of a standard order, a TSO, will require an investment in engineering and testing, and the state UAS test sites come into the picture in that regard. So there will be this schism coming up, right? We're going to have toys on one hand, and we're going to have professional tools on the other, not too much in the gap in between. And the cost difference will be pretty incredible between the toy side and the professional tool side, is my guess, once we start adopting to software-defined radios and things like that in order to adopt to the different waveforms, for example. What are you guys seeing in your business in the direction these standards are going to come, and what they're going to do to us?
Well, definitely what you had mentioned before, Ted, is you definitely have to take the manufacturing out of the hula hoop factory and put it into a different building that has a different set of standards, right? So hopefully that'll happen. Hopefully there will be those on the more commercial, not commercial, but consumer level that will be able to move into that realm. I see DJI moving into that realm, and maybe having one brand that'll be for the hobbyist, another brand that'll be more for the professional. And the difference is, there'll be a huge juxtaposition between the 2 cost factors.
That's interesting. So you'll see that you're seeing that already. You're seeing the manufacturing side of the house start thinking about that, having two different brandings on the system.
You got aircraft hardware. You know,
Yeah.
once you put that bolt on, it does not come off, and when you do take it off, it has to be replaced with a brand new one. That kind of stuff. And a whole, you know, every flight is logged. Everything is logged on the entire aircraft. We don't really have a lot of data. You know, we've talked about this before, Ted. There's no motor program for these. We don't know at how many hours. It hasn't been tested. We don't have the data. There hasn't been double-blind tests. You know, everything is super biased. So there's no way to have a true understanding of how safe and reliable the equipment is.
And so we're going to see that coming into the picture through the creation of standards.
Yeah.
And
so
then that's going to roll back into, once again, Chuck, training.
Yep.
And this is interesting. This conversation spun back several times to the exact dimensions that Gretchen took us to: training, counter drone, and information extraction and expressive mathematics and such that are the end product of all this. With the drone itself being a skyhook, and the control station hopefully turning into something very, very simple that has more administrative rather than direct command and control roles, with the command and control being embedded somewhere in the highly autonomous operation.
Exactly. It'll be more human on the loop rather than a human in the loop, you know?
That's get the human out of the loop, but get him observing the loop, and is the loop heading in the right direction or not? And if not, let's get out of here. If it is heading in the right direction, let's get there faster.
Yep, exactly. So we are seeing a lot more of that. The software-defined radios, we're going to be testing a lot of those at Tried Inspector. Also incorporating the cellular network is another component of some of the comms that we've been working with. You know, we could have a unit in the, aloft that'll have an actual cell connection, and we can, through the cloud, stream it down anywhere in the world. And that's going to be really useful for law enforcement and such, for, just observation. And then how do you trade out that unit? We have another project that's working where we have multiple units aloft doing surveillance and are able to be replaced autonomously without any human in the loop, only a human on the loop, based on battery fatigue and such. So there's 24-hour surveillance of a specific area.
This sounds very close to having end-state user requirements come forward and define what the product has to perform, and then how the product has to be built would be a consequence of how it has to perform.
Exactly.
I'd like to hook you up with Gretchen West, who was on the show again a couple weeks ago. She's going to launch at AVUSA next week. They're going to launch this thing called the CDA, the Commercial Drone Alliance, which will be a place where all end-state users come together, and I think you would qualify in that regard. And you guys can start defining what the future needs to look like, so that the manufacturers get that information directly, and we no longer have the manufacturer knocking on the door saying, I got the best thing for you. Now it's going to be the users saying, here's what you have to make. So Chuck will send that email, get you hooked up with Gretchen, and move on in that direction. And at this point in time, Chuck, again, we've lost Clay. You'll get to meet him sometime. Three Kailua guys all together here, kind of on the show, unbelievably.
I know, yeah.
Unreal, huh? And Kauainui's in our blood, I guess. But
yep, it is.
Chuck, hey, thanks for staying up late. It's 11 o'clock now. We're getting there in DC. In fact, tomorrow hits in an hour and a quarter, Chuck, and you probably have to get up and get something done. So thanks a lot, Chuck Devaney. And I wish we had Clay on to say goodbye to, but Clay will get you again. Clay Inskeep out of Pomona, California. And this is Ted Ralston, and we're signing off for this show today.